Welcome to Uncovering Real Estate, brought to you by the Brampton Real Estate Board. I'm your host for today, Wasim Parkar. Today we're going to talk about the standard conditions of the agreement of purchase and sale. Buying and selling, it sounds so easy, but there's a lot to understand that happens behind the scene. To join me in this discussion, I have Mark Weisleder, a real estate lawyer from realestatelawyers.ca. Mark, great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Wasim. It's a pleasure to be here.
Fantastic. Mark, you know what? Most people probably don't even understand that the agreement of purchase and sale actually has quite a few standard conditions. How would you explain the standard agreement of purchase and sale to any novice buyer and seller?
It's very important that you understand the terms of the agreement before you sign anything. Like anything in life, you've got to understand. And, you know, one of the reasons why I recommend that you work with a good realtor is someone who can explain to you what these clauses mean, because it does affect your legal rights once you sign this contract. And so lots of times it has to be understood and you have to fill it out properly, because these are the things that will govern your relationship. So as an example, if you want to make sure you get all the appliances, they've got to be written in carefully. And you don't want the landlord taking out anything. Some things are not so simple, like the closet organizer, or maybe the stand that is holding the television on the wall. You got to be very careful to list everything that you want to be included at the time of closing. So it's very important that you understand all the things and all your rights before you sign the contract itself.
So would I be correct in assuming that most first-time buyers or most first-time sellers would really struggle with this form, the standard form?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of clauses in there that are sort of legal mumbo jumbo, and I think it's important that buyers and sellers understand that. So as an example, in the little form it says that if there's a Bell telephone easement on the property, the buyer accepts it.
Okay.
But if there's a little bit larger easement, the buyer doesn't accept that. So you see, it's important that sellers disclose this information to buyers, because buyers might use that information to try to cancel a deal later. So it's very important to understand what's in the contract so that then you can be properly protected, buyer or seller, when you sign it.
Right. So in that case, I'm guessing the standard form, is it easy though? Is it easy for the typical buyer and seller to understand the nuances of the form?
If they want to do it themselves, I know that the Toronto Real Estate Board and some of the other boards, they offer sort of like a version of the agreement with almost like a user-friendly explanation of each clause.
Okay.
That's one thing. I've written books to explain the form itself, and I find that more educated customers are just better informed. And also, working with the right realtor is also very important, because they can explain it themselves.
Okay. Now, in terms of rental contracts, what are some of the typical rental contracts that are assumed?
This is very important because, you know, in the old days, buyers would assume the hot water tank. So you know their hot water tank is rented, and after closing, you're going to pay those rental payments. But recently, in the last number of years, a lot of owners have bought furnaces on payments, they've bought air conditioning systems on payments, they bought all kinds of things on payments, and now what happens when you sell the house?
Yeah.
So you see, it's very important that the buyer knows, what am I getting when I buy this house? Yeah, I'm getting the fridge, but am I getting these payments that I have to make?
Yeah.
And so, you know, one of the things I say is look at the gas bill. So look at the gas bill, see what all these extra charges are for the rental items, and then make sure that the buyer is aware of this before they sign any contract. And for the buyer, ask questions. What am I inheriting after closing? Because if you don't want to keep that contract, sometimes it costs thousands of dollars to pay it out. So that's why you must understand the terms.
Yeah, and that just goes with simple due diligence, I'm guessing, right? For example, even most people when they're moving in, if you're moving, let's say, from a condo where you've always paid the maintenance fees into a house, you might be quite surprised with things like utilities and bills. So it's important to find out how much those cost beforehand.
Oh yeah, whatever you can to find out. It's so important, because you know you can't live just to pay bills. You've got to have enough money to pay your mortgage, pay the property taxes and your utilities, and still be able to live. If you have bought a house and you're just choked with just then how are you going to live? You're not going to be happy. And a home is for memories, not for, stress.
Yes.
And that's the problem. That's why you have to be so careful, especially in this bidding war environment that we're in. People just spending maybe a little bit too much and then feeling choked later with payments.
I think you bring up a great point. In case of sometimes wanting to add conditions, what would you say are some of the major conditions one would possibly think of adding?
So when you're buying a home, number one is the financing condition, because it's not enough to be pre-approved for a mortgage, but also you want to make sure that the bank has sent out their appraiser to make sure that you haven't overpaid for the property. This is a common mistake in a bidding war, because a lot of Brampton properties, for example, are going in bidding wars. So if you're approved for a mortgage for 400, but then you bid 450, and then the bank says, you know what, we don't agree it's worth 450, they're not going to give you that mortgage, and now you're going to have extra money last minute to close your deal. So very important for that financing condition. And then there's the home inspection. You must inspect the home, otherwise you could have all kinds of nasty hidden problems after closing. And I will say that I know that in some bidding wars, for example, people say we have to put in an offer without a condition. My advice there, hire a home inspector, do the inspection before you put your offer in. Yes, you'll spend some money, but it's worth it, because you'll have peace of mind after closing most of the time that you will not have these floods or other serious problems.
Okay, Mark, you've done a great job of breaking down the standard agreement. You've given us a great intro to understanding how it works. I want to get into more details after the break, so stay tuned. Folks, the standard agreement in more depth and more detail after the break, right here on Uncovering Real Estate, brought to you by the Brampton Real Estate Board.